And part of the reason why it took so long was because I could only digest it in bite-sized pieces,
Mhm.
knowing that looking at a census record, seeing 1860, for instance, the last census before slavery ended, before the Civil War, my ancestors would have been listed along with cattle or physical
Oh,
property that the landowner, the planter owned.
mm.
And they would have been, my great great grandfather would have been listed as male, age, whatever, no name at all. That's how I was able to finish the first book.
Welcome to the Persistence U podcast with Lizbeth. That's you as in university, but we're really much more of a community here. Lizbeth Meredith is an author, speaker, and online teacher. Each week, she'll be delivering amazing stories from survivors and strivers, all threaded together with a dose of persistence. We're so glad you're listening.
For sisters and brothers, I have the wonderful Mel Edwards with us today. Mel is the podcast host I was so fortunate to meet. He hosts stories from real life. He is a fifth or sixth generation Texan. He has been a journalist in the past, and now he is an author of a couple of books. Most recently, or rather, maybe most notoriously, he wrote a wonderful book called The Eyes of Texans From Slavery to the Texas, from Slavery to the Texas Capitol. And that is available on Amazon. Mel is such a fun person to talk to. He's good company, and I hope that you will enjoy his story of persistence and resilience. He's led quite a life. Thanks as ever for being here. I love it. I love to hear from you and really appreciate that if everything that you had to be doing today, you're spending time with me and listening to this. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend or several. You can always get the link and forward it to friends via text or put it on your social media, whatever is best. I really appreciate helping if you would help me grow this podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Mel Edwards, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you again. I was so happy to be on your podcast. And if I could just start by saying that one of your books is called The Eyes of Texans, not Texas, From Slavery to the Texas Capitol. But anyway, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Been a long day, but it's been a good one. We
Good day. Good days are good.
Yes, we connected before on your podcast, but I was interested in hearing your backstory and why it is. I mean, you chose a career in journalism, you chose a career in writing, and a lot of hard things.
Yeah.
And usually there's a story behind the story. So, what is this? What is it that really shaped you as a man?
Well, my dad shaped me as a man. I was very close to my dad when I was young. He was about 40 years old when I was born, so a little bit older than other dads of my peers. But but because of that, I had older siblings, and I grew up almost like an only child because my next youngest sibling was 12 years older.
Wow. Okay.
So from the age of 6, I was an only child in the house. So my dad and I were very close. We played sports together and fished almost every weekend. Went to lots and lots and lots and lots of baseball games, literally hundreds of baseball games. I grew up in Houston.
Okay.
So the Houston Astros, as you can see with my jersey, it's still my favorite team. But my dad definitely shaped who I became as a man. But as a writer, I think that sort of came about. Well, I had a talent for writing pretty young, but I think it really became part of my personality because I was so introspective. And then after my dad died when I was 13 years old, I withdrew even more. But so I could really only express myself through writing.
Wow. That's such a
And that
critical
became part of
age.
who I was and who I am.
I'll bet. I mean, that was a really sensitive age to have such a big event happen like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was he supportive of your writing?
Well, and I had really only started writing about the time he passed away. I
Okay.
often wonder what I would have become if he had lived longer, because I know he had dreams for me to be like a doctor or a lawyer
Right.
or something. And I'm sure that would have created some conflict if that's not the path I wanted. But we never got that chance. And so, but I think he would have been very proud of me. His idea of success, because of his background and his family's history, his idea of success. Well, I remember once when I was probably 8 years old, and I mentioned this in my second book, The Strength of a Thousand Suns. He like held his hand up, showed me his hand. My dad was a big guy and he had huge hands and lots of calluses on his hands from physical labor his whole life. And he showed me his hands and he said, I don't want your hands to look like this.
Mm.
I want you to have a professional career where you sit at a desk and wear a suit.
Wow.
So that was his idea of success, not having calloused hands. And the funny thing is, while I don't have any calluses on my hands, I don't have any natural ability to build or fix anything. It just skipped completely over me. My dad could build everything. My son is a mechanical engineer. That trait just completely skipped over me. And I'm all mental, writing, everything, not physical other than sports. But it's funny that as I was growing up, I would look at my hands occasionally and think about the time when I was 8 years old, and my dad said he didn't want my hands to look like his, and my hands don't look anything like his. I don't have any calluses on my hands, and I was embarrassed by that for a long time. I'm thinking, am I man enough?
Right.
I don't. I haven't done the physical labor that my dad did, and then I started to realize, of course I am. I'm just a different kind of man, and I am my dad's dream of what he wanted me to be,
Oh,
at least
that
in
is
that part.
beautiful. That is beautiful. How old were you when you knew that you were your dad's dream?
I don't know. Probably in my 30s.
Okay. What a
Yeah, and
beautiful realization.
yeah, and I was 40 years old before I understood what a highly sensitive person was. I came across that book and started reading it, and I thought, that's me. And it helped me understand so many things about my life, being introspective and being sensory and having strong intuition and things that probably are more likely to be identified with a woman. But I'm certainly not feminine. That's when I realized that, and I've said this many times with my sons and with other players. Like I coached baseball for a lot of years. There are a lot of different ways to be a man. You don't have to fit into a mold. You don't have to try to be something you're not. You don't have to be macho or you think that's what a man is. If that's how you are, that's fine. If that's not how you are, don't try to be something else because then you would be a fraud. So be a respectful man, be an upstanding kind of man that other people want to be around and want their children to be around or want to be around themselves.
Right. That's fantastic. When you were 13 and you lost your dad, how did you start finding your way back to regular life and moving forward? Because that has to really knock you off your feet as a 13-year-old male.
Yeah. Well, it's probably going to be hard to believe, but I got back on my feet by pretending nothing changed.
Okay.
So these details are going to probably seem unusual for people who haven't experienced something like this, but I remember specific details about that time, even though I'm almost 59 now, so it was a long time ago. But I remember my dad died on a Monday morning. I remember what the weather was like. I remember what clothes I was wearing when I arrived at the hospital. So it was a Monday, and then the Tuesday, the very next day, I went to school. So I just acted like nothing happened. And and for years I acted like nothing happened. And it was my junior year in college when I was 20 years old when just out of the blue, the emotions hit me. It's like I'm this close to graduating. I've been the last 7 years without my dad. and I've never once talked about it, including to my mom. We never once talked about it. And it was at that point when I believe I finally started healing, when I started talking about it.
Sure.
And that gave me a little time to heal before my mom got cancer, and then she died when I was 25. So that, as tragic as that sounds, that gave me a little bit of buffer
Sure.
between like being able to mourn separately for them rather than it hitting me all at once.
Absolutely. That's
And
so good. I mean, that really is. It's some of us have to compartmentalize because maybe there isn't time for grief in the moment when you were 13 because there was so much else of life to be tending to. And some of us are sensitive to how our parents feel about our grief. And, yet you have to do it at some point. It doesn't go anywhere. It's still there. And so you did have that moment. And I'm sure graduating was a mixed feeling too.
it
Beautiful
was. It
and
was.
sad,
Yeah,
bittersweet.
absolutely. Absolutely. And all those life events,
Sure.
marriage, children. But another thing that got me through those times was baseball. I mentioned my dad and I spent a lot of time together going to baseball games. And I played baseball just about every day when I was a teenager. Growing up in Houston, it's really hot during the summertime, but it didn't matter to me because that was my therapy. I would go out there even if I could only get one or two other kids to throw the ball or hit the ball. I was out there every day. If you've ever seen the movie The Sandlot, Benny, the kid in there who always wanted to play no matter what the weather was like, and the other kids sometimes wanted to do other stuff. I was Benny in my story.
Oh, I love that.
I always wanted to be the one to play because for them it was just a game.
Right.
For me, it was trying to get through the day, trying to get through life.
Is that why you eventually chose to coach baseball?
That's part of the reason. I love baseball. I love
Okay.
working with young people, and I know so much about baseball. I thought, well, I have to coach. This is how I give back my knowledge. And then when I had a son, when I was 31, I had a son, and I first thought I want him to play baseball, and then I thought it's going to have to be his choice. When he's old enough, it's going to have to be his choice, not mine.
Good.
And when he got old enough to start playing, he played a little bit of baseball, but he really gravitated towards soccer. And I'm not going to say I was disappointed because he was a really good soccer player and I didn't like soccer. I learned to like it
Right.
enough. I was at every game, no matter what. And then, so he played soccer from age like 6 until 13. And then when he was 14, he was about to go into high school, he came up to me one day and he said, I want to play baseball in high school and I want to play baseball in college.
Oh, wow.
So I
Okay.
said, that's a big jump. So you're going to have to try out for a team this summer. And if you make the team, then we'll go from there. Well, he made a team, a travel team, was a county all-star the first year. Started getting letters from college as a 14-year-old because he was a really good athlete and he was big for his age. My son was like more like my dad than I was.
Mhm.
Like in his physical build, in his physical abilities, he was much more like my dad than I was. And so coaches at school tried to recruit him to play football, but his mom, by that time we were divorced, his mom wouldn't let him play football. And so I decided we got enough problems. I don't need to be interjecting myself.
Smart woman, by the way. Saved his noggin. Good
Yeah,
for her.
saved his brain.
That's right.
And so he played baseball through high school. He came to live with me full time halfway through high school and transferred schools and played the last 2 years at the high school near me where I lived and worked, and was recruited to play in college. And this was his dream since he was 14 years old. And unfortunately, he got hurt his freshman year and had to have shoulder surgery and never played again. So he was on the college team his freshman year, rehabbing the whole year, but he never once got to play. And by his sophomore year, because he was a mechanical engineering major, he decided he just didn't have time for the other stuff. He needed to really focus on engineering. And he's now 27 and he's a manager at his engineering company, an international company. And last year they promoted him as the youngest manager they've ever had. And He makes way more money than I've ever made, and I'm really proud of him.
That's so exciting. And I will say, your dad, had a dream that your hands would not look like his. And yes, he may have wanted you to be a doctor or a lawyer. And quite honestly, from fellow writer to fellow writer, you do not make money in writing. So I can understand that no parent in the history of parenting has probably said, my dream is for you to be a starving writer. But you did, in fact, honor, maybe you didn't even mean to, but you honored his dream. What is your dream for your son? What was your dream for your kids? Did you have one as specific as that?
No, not that specific. I just wanted to be involved in their lives every chance I could be. That another influence from my dad's death in my age was my mindset was, you may not live long, don't waste time.
Okay.
And so I had a family young. I spent all of my free time, whatever, if you would call it free time, with my kids in their activities. My son played, I had 3 daughters too, but they weren't athletes. But they had other activities that they were involved in, singing and other things, and I was at all of those events. But my son's sports took up a lot of time. And there was a one point when he was on a soccer team and two soccer teams and a baseball team at the same time. So he had events every day of the week, and I was at every one. In all the games he played, I missed 2,
Wow.
and those were because I was out of town both times. So I'm pretty proud of that. I wanted him, and my daughters too, but it was very different kind of situation. I wanted my kids to know that they were important enough that whatever they were interested in, I was also interested in. And if it was their passion, it was going to be mine too. I wasn't just going to be there to show up and look at my phone while they were participating. I was a fan. I was a real fan of my kids.
I love that. And I mean, I think my kids, if they heard that kind of scenario, they would want to cry. And there are a lot of kids who don't have that in a father, period. They may not have it in a mother, but far many more don't have it in a dad. And I love that you were able to incorporate such a huge loss at a sensitive time in your life. You incorporated that into your life and made it a strength so that you could parent in a great and fabulous way. It sounds like your dad was a terrific role model, but none of those lessons were wasted on you. And that's lovely.
None were wasted on me. And that's the way I define my repaying my dad is all the time he invested in me, I owed my kids at least that much. And I wanted to do it for him, and I wanted to do it for them, and I wanted to do it for me too. And so I feel like my dad's example came through me, and I hope my kids absorb that lesson as well.
Oh, that is absolutely a stunning lesson. When did you start writing your first book? We could talk about those for just a little bit
Okay.
because I know that story is really important to you, like it is to me. So tell us a little bit about, and are you the 5th or 6th generation Texan?
I'm the 6th.
Okay.
And then my children and my grandchildren are 7th and 8th.
Wow.
So
That's a lot of Texas.
that's a lot of Texans, yes. I started writing the first one during lockdowns in 2020.
Okay.
But I started researching in 1988. So I started doing genealogy research in 1988, and it took forever. You can't even imagine unless you're in a situation like mine when you're the descendant of enslaved people where they were not recognized by full names. They were not listed in official documents. So in order to find records, sometimes you just don't have, and that is the ability to find those records just doesn't exist. Sometimes you get lucky. And I got lucky with one document in 2020. Actually, during the lockdown, I was watching those genealogy shows like, what is it called? Finding Your Roots and Who Do You Think
Right.
You Are?
Exactly.
And so what the lesson I learned is go as close to the source as possible to where those people lived.
Okay.
And that's their best chance to find documentation. So I was living in Maryland. I came back to Texas, went to Leon County, Texas, where I knew my family had lived for generations. And I found a voting roll from 1867, 2 years after Juneteenth, the emancipation of Texas.
Okay.
Before, well, records for formerly enslaved people only listed their names for the first time in the 1870 census. So finding that record in 1867 gave me a little bit of a head start. So it showed my great-great-great-grandfather had started a business and he was eligible to vote. And he had voted in 1867 for Ulysses S. Grant.
Okay.
And in the record, it asks, how long have you lived in this city, in this town, in Texas? And so he said he had lived in each one for 23 years. And so that pushed me back to 1844. That gave me an official document that showed he had lived in Texas in 1844. In 1844, Texas was a country. It was the Republic of Texas. And that document allowed me to be able to apply for membership in the Sons of the Republic of Texas.
Oh, wow.
And that gave me access to more information. And that's how I was able to finish the first book.
Okay.
With that, well, actually both books together. Because this one, The Eyes of Texans, is mostly my mother's side of the family.
Okay.
And then The Strength of a Thousand Sons is mostly my dad's side of the family. But both sides lived in Texas during the Republic of Texas time.
Okay. That is so amazing. And when you put it like that, I mean, it's hard anyway to look for genealogy unless your family's really close. Hard to be able to get all that history, but to know how difficult, almost impossible.
Almost impossible.
Yeah.
Almost impossible when you got, and it's really heartbreaking to think. And part of the reason why it took so long was because I could only digest it in bite-sized pieces, knowing that looking at a census record, seeing 1860, for instance, the last census before slavery ended, before the Civil War, my ancestors would have been listed along with cattle or physical property that the landowner, the planter, owned. And they would have been, my great-great-grandfather would have been listed as male, age, whatever, no name at all.
Okay.
There's no way you can connect that with any person. So it wasn't just difficult, it was impossible.
And you did it. I mean, you had some
and
good
I
breaks.
did it. I had some good breaks. And the funny thing was, I was living in Maryland at the time. I found out that he had been born in Maryland about 20 miles from where I lived at the time.
Okay.
And then he was sold and moved to Texas. So because he was born so close to where I lived, I was able to go to that town and get some information. Not a lot, but a little bit.
That's pretty exciting too, to be able to go there. I mean, you're in Texas, and to go to those places and just imagine is pretty powerful.
Yeah, and the really interesting thing is his name was Blayton, his last name was Blayton, and those were the names of his owners. And one of the Blaytons was a governor of Maryland, and the town where he was born was called Bladensburg. So I drove through Bladensburg a lot without knowing that was a connection to my family.
That's wild. That's absolutely wild. Did it feel good to finish it and release it to the world?
It did. It did. And I told the story in a way that a 7th grade Texas history student could read and not be traumatized. That was my target audience.
Okay.
In Texas, everybody has to take Texas history in 7th grade. Okay. So my goal was that I was envisioning my target reader being a 7th grade Texas history student. So an adult could read it and read between the lines and some of the more traumatic events, but a child wouldn't necessarily understand all the physical horrors that slavery included. It wasn't just a matter of taking away somebody's freedom. It was taking away their name. It was taking away their children.
Right.
The real hero in this book, I'll make this really quick. The real hero in this book, my great-great-great-grandfather, Isaac Blayton, they were in Texas. He and his wife came together, which was unusual that they were able to stay together. They had children in Texas, and they were growing up together without being disconnected, which was again unusual, until the oldest one became a teenager, and she was sold away to a plantation in Louisiana, and there was nothing they could do about it. When that happened, it was usually like the person was dead because they would never see him again.
Wow.
But my great-great-great-grandfather had a plan that took him years to devise, and he was able to find her and bring her back to Texas.
Wow.
And she was my great-great-grandmother. And she lived, after he brought her back, she lived her remaining 80 years in Texas. And roughly 70 of those years she lived as a widow. So she lived to be 99 years old. She was born like 15 years before the Civil War, something like that. And she died after World War II.
Gee. Well,
So
you do have a lot of longevity in your family too,
that's a
then.
lot of American history.
That's a lot of American history. That's lovely. So how did you write the second book right after the first or concurrently?
I wrote it 2 years later.
Okay.
And I had some leftover material that didn't quite fit into the first one. And I did more research on my dad's side of the family, which was much more challenging because I didn't even know real detailed information 2 generations back. I was my dad's dad because he died 20 years before I was born. And because of how abusive he was, nobody in the family wanted to have any memory of him.
Right.
So they forced themselves to forget a lot of details. But I remember my dad telling me some stories when I was a kid, and those pieces eventually fit together. Like I didn't even know what his real name was. I knew people called him Samson, but the story was that they called him that because like the Samson in the Bible because of how strong he was.
Okay.
And then other relatives said, well, that wasn't his real name. His name was Charles or something. But it turned out his name was Samson, but it wasn't spelled the same as the one in the Bible. And so finding that, I was able to go back a couple more generations. I went to the place where I know they had lived in the 1840s and got enough information. And then I pieced that together. Again, both the books are told in first person. So every generation is telling their own story to the reader. And my second book starts with my dad as a 10-year-old telling the story of what he called the worst day of his life. 10 years old, the worst day of his life was trying to kill his father. And it was the worst day because he failed at it.
Oh, was his mom getting hurt?
Everybody was being abused.
I used to work with juvenile delinquents, and one of the top reasons back in the day that juvenile delinquents were charged with murder if it was in the family was harming the person that had injured their mom. So that makes sense. That's really sad.
It's really sad. And he tried to shoot him and the gun jammed.
Okay.
And he ran away. But he decided at that point as a 10-year-old that if he ever had kids, he was just going to do the opposite of everything his dad did. And he told me this story when I was probably 5 years old.
Wow.
He said that was his parenting idea. Just do the opposite of what his dad did. And his opposite was being gentle and being present and just being a great dad.
I love that. That's absolutely beautiful. And sometimes for those of us who have come through families like your dad had, good intentions aren't always enough. So I always thought that I just could wish away what, turns out a little counseling or something different, parenting groups could have helped first. But some people can do that. And I just applaud the intention and his follow through. And what a huge impact it's had on both you and then your kids and then your grandchild. I mean, lovely. That is absolutely beautiful.
Everything changed. He changed everything.
Oh, that is so neat. That is beautiful. Is he pictured in your book or is it dedicated to him? One of them?
Yes, the second one is dedicated to him, and there is a picture of him. You probably can't see that. The picture's in black and white. But that's my
Oh, I do
dad.
see it. Actually, if you keep it
That's
close to
me.
you, I can see. I absolutely
And
very
that's my
handsome.
son. So three
Oh, I
men, three
love
Edwards.
that. So for viewers on YouTube, they can definitely see it, and for those not on YouTube, they can definitely buy it or see
And
it's on YouTube.
when I went back to the area where they were from, I found this. I don't know if you can see the street
Yes,
sign.
Edwards, the street
And
sign, Edwards.
that's where they lived. That
Oh
was
my
their
goodness.
farm.
I love that. That is really special. Where do you direct people to find you, your podcast, and your books? Mel, what is the place best for someone to just click on and find you, or the couple
Well,
places?
for the podcast, www.podcastreallife.com.
Okay,
And that'll take you to all the platforms that host my podcast.
nice.
So podcastreallife.com. This is actually a brand new website. I just started last week. And for the books, you can go to Amazon. That's the easiest place to find them. It's
Okay.
Melvin E. Edwards. And make sure you put the E because there are other Melvin Edwards. Actually, my dad's name was Melvin Edwards, and that's why I've always used the E. That kept me from being a junior, for one thing. And that's always been my way of honoring my dad. Since I was probably 10 years old, I've always called myself Melvin E. Edwards.
Okay.
So to make myself unique and to also keep myself tied to him.
With your dad. That's beautiful. I so appreciate you telling this, sharing your life with us today. That was lovely. And thanks again for your fabulous company. Good to see you.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's show. Thank you so much for listening. Now, to find out more, head on over to lameredith.com and be sure to hop on the mailing list too. If you've enjoyed this show, please leave a rating and review or share with a friend. And if you really, really liked it, go ahead and subscribe so that you never miss another episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Persistence U with Lizbeth.